Welcome to Positive Voices. Please like this video and subscribe Positive Voices that we're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. The air was thick with tension as Becky worked silently in the kitchen that evening. Her movements mechanical. Alex sat at the dining table, his eyes fixed on her. The beer market brought still untouched beside him. He could feel the weight of the unspoken words between them, but he wasn't ready to speak. Yet, Becky broke the silence first. Are you really this upset over a suggestion? Her voice was calm, but there was a hint of defiance in her tone. Alex leaned forward, his voice low but laced with steel. Upset? No, Becky. Upset is when the cable goes out during a game. This is betrayal. She froze, gripping the edge of the counter. It wasn't betrayal. I haven't done anything. I just wanted to talk about something different. Different? Alex repeated bitterly. Is that what they call it now? Sharing your husband with strangers? Becky spun around. Her cheeks flushed. It's not like that. I thought it could be exciting for us. Something to reignite. Stop. Alex interrupted sharply. Don't finish that sentence. That night, Alex couldn't sleep. Becky's words replayed in his mind, each one cutting deeper. He thought about their life together. The quiet morning sipping coffee. The inside jokes. The promises they had made. Was it all a lie? He began to notice things he hadn't before. The way Becky avoided his gaze. The slight hesitation in her laughter. The almost imperceptible distance that had crept into their intimacy. Had she been drifting away for months? Or had he simply been too blind to see it? The next morning, while Becky showered, Alex opened her laptop. His hands trembled as he navigated through her files. A part of him hoping to find nothing. But then he saw it. A folder labeled innocuously as event ideas. Inside were emails between Becky and Lisa. The tone was casual at first. Jokes about the cookout. Light chatter about the neighborhood. But then it shifted. Mark says Alex seems too rigid for something like this. Are you sure he'd even consider it? Lisa had written. Becky's reply had been quick and eager. He's just stuck in his ways. But if we ease him into it, maybe he'll come around. Alex's stomach churned. This wasn't just a passing thought. Becky had been planning this, discussing it behind his back. Later that day, Alex confronted Becky with the emails. She paled as he tossed the laptop onto the bed. Care to explain this? He asked, his voice dangerously calm. Becky stammered, her composure crumbling. It's not what it looks like. Lisa just suggested. Stop lying. Alex snapped. You were scheming, Becky. You wanted to manipulate me into what? Sharing you with Mark? Trading our vows for some thrill? Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head. It wasn't like that. I love you, Alex. I just thought. No, he said coldly. You didn't think. If you had, you'd have realized how much you were gambling with. And now, you've lost. In the days that followed, Alex decided he wouldn't let this end with a simple divorce. Becky needed to understand the gravity of what she had done. And Mark and Lisa needed to learn that meddling in someone else's marriage came with consequences. He reached out to an old friend, Jake, a private investigator. Together, they began digging into Mark and Lisa's lives. What they uncovered was a treasure trove of secrets. Mark had been embezzling funds from his company, and Lisa had a string of affairs that had already strained their marriage to the brink. Alex also discovered Becky's recent search history, queries about divorce settlements, shared assets, and spousal rights. It was clear she had been considering her options, likely preparing for a future where their marriage didn't survive her desires. Alex's revenge was meticulous. He pretended to reconsider Becky's proposal, even feigning interest in meeting Mark and Lisa at their swingers club. Becky, desperate to mend their marriage, eagerly agreed. The night of the meeting, Alex ensured everything was in place. Jake had tipped off Mark's boss about the embezzlement, and Alex had prepared evidence to confront Becky publicly. At the club, as Mark and Lisa tried to guide them into their world, Alex played along until the perfect moment. Funny thing, Mark, Alex began, his voice dripping with mock curiosity. Do they let criminals into places like this? Or is your boss too busy processing the audit report I sent him to care? Mark's face turned ghostly pale, and Lisa's fake smile faltered. Becky looked between them, confused. What's going on? She asked. Alex turned to her, his expression a mix of sadness and resolve. What's going on, Becky, is that I've spent the last 7 years being your husband. But tonight, I'm taking back my dignity. He left the club, Becky trailing behind him, sobbing and begging for another chance. But Alex's mind was made up. Alex filed for divorce the next morning, the evidence of Becky's emotional infidelity and premeditated plans bolstering his case. Mark lost his job, Lisa filed for separation, and Becky was left to grapple with the fallout of her actions. For Alex, the end of his marriage wasn't a failure. It was a new beginning. On his farm, he rebuilt his life, finding peace and solitude and pride in his resilience. Becky stood outside the farmhouse, her hair disheveled, tears streaming down her face. It had been 6 months since Alex left her. 6 long months of therapy sessions, unanswered calls, and sleepless nights filled with regret. When she heard he had moved to the countryside, she spent weeks convincing herself not to track him down. But now, with her life in shambles, she couldn't stay away. She knocked on the door, her heart racing. When Alex opened it, his face was impassive, his eyes cold. "What do you want, Becky?" he asked, his voice devoid of emotion. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice breaking. "Please, Alex, I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I need you to hear me out." He hesitated for a moment before stepping aside. "You've got 5 minutes." Becky walked into the cozy farmhouse, the warmth of the space contrasting sharply with the cold welcome. She sat down at the small kitchen table, taking in the signs of his new life. A stack of books on woodworking, a half-finished mug of coffee. It was all so different from the man she thought she knew. "I'm sorry," she began, her voice trembling. "For everything. I was selfish, I was stupid, and I ruined the best thing in my life." Alex leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Is that all?" "No," she said quickly. "I've been working on myself. Therapy, self-reflection. I've been trying to understand why I did what I did. And I know now that I didn't appreciate you the way I should have." He raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "And what do you expect from me, Becky? Forgiveness? A second chance?" She shook her head, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I don't expect anything. I just needed to tell you how sorry I am. You deserved so much better than what I gave you." Alex's gaze softened slightly, but his resolve remained. "Becky, I loved you. More than anything. But love isn't enough when there's no trust or respect. You broke something in me, and no amount of apologies can fix that." Her shoulders sagged as the weight of his words sank in. She nodded, standing slowly. "I understand. I won't bother you again. I hope you find happiness. You deserve it." As Becky left, Alex felt a pang of sadness, but it was fleeting. His life on the farm had given him something he hadn't realized he was missing: peace. The days were long and quiet, but the work was rewarding. He spent his mornings tending to the garden, his afternoons repairing the old farmhouse, and his evenings sitting on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. One day, while shopping at the local farmer's market, Alex met someone. Her name was Emily, a widow who ran a small bakery in town. She had an easy laugh and a warmth that drew people to her. They struck up a conversation over a display of fresh apples. And before he knew it, Alex found himself smiling in a way he hadn't in years. Over the next few months, Alex and Emily grew closer. She wasn't like Becky. There were no grand gestures or dramatic declarations. With Emily, everything felt natural, easy. Meanwhile, Becky's life continued to unravel. Mark and Lisa's actions had become the talk of the neighborhood after Alex's revenge exposed their secrets. Becky, too, faced judgment from those around her, and the isolation was crushing. Determined to rebuild her life, she threw herself into work and therapy. Slowly, she began to find stability. She even started volunteering at a local shelter, finding solace and helping others. But every quiet moment was filled with thoughts of Alex and the life they could have had if she hadn't been so reckless. One day, while visiting the shelter, Becky saw a familiar face. It was Lisa, now divorced and volunteering to fulfill court-mandated community service. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither spoke. Then Lisa broke the silence. "Becky, I didn't think I'd see you here." "I could say the same," Becky replied, her voice cool. Lisa sighed, looking away. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For everything. I never should have gotten involved." Becky nodded slowly. "We all made mistakes. But I think we've both paid for them." A year later, Alex stood on the porch of his farmhouse, Emily by his side. The two of them had built a life together, one filled with trust, laughter, and mutual respect. As they watched the sun set over the fields, Alex felt a sense of completeness he hadn't thought possible. For the first time in a long time, he felt truly at peace.